There's a feeling most people have had, but almost nobody says out loud. It's not failure, it's not depression. It's something quieter than both. A low hum in the background of an otherwise normal day. A feeling that everyone else got the memo, figured out the directions, found the right road, and somehow you're still standing in the parking lot wondering if you took a wrong turn somewhere. Your college roommate just bought a house. Someone you graduated with announced their second promotion this year. A person you barely remember from high school has 3 kids, a podcast, and apparently runs marathons now. And you're just here. Not unhappy exactly, but not where you thought you'd be. Behind. Let's start with a question nobody ever thinks to ask. Who made the schedule? 30 by now. Stable career, serious relationship. 35. House, maybe kids. 40. Have your life figured out. 45. Be exactly who you intended to become when you were 22. Where did this timeline come from? Who wrote it down? Who signed it into law? Nobody. And also, everyone. Because this schedule doesn't exist on paper anywhere. There's no document, no official list, no authority that handed it to you, and yet millions of people carry it inside them every single day, measuring their lives against it, feeling late on deadlines that were never actually set. In 1965, social psychologist Bernice Neugarten gave this invisible timetable a name. She called it the social clock, a culturally defined set of expectations about when key life events are supposed to happen. Finish school, start a career, get married, buy property, have children. The social clock isn't written anywhere. It's absorbed through decades of cultural messaging, through family conversations, through watching the people around you, through 1,000 small signals that told you, this is how life is supposed to go, and this is when. Neugarten found something important. Events that happen roughly when the social clock says they should feel normal, even invisible. Events that happen earlier or later create distress, not because of the event itself, but because of the timing. The problem isn't that you're not married. The problem is that you're not married yet. That single word, yet, is the social clock speaking. It assumes a schedule that was never yours to begin with. And most people never notice it's there until they feel it pressing against them like a deadline they can't explain. But here's what most people never notice. The social clock explains why the timeline exists. It doesn't explain why we can't stop measuring ourselves against other people. Why someone else's promotion announcement can ruin a Tuesday. Why a wedding photo from someone you haven't spoken to in 6 years can sit in the back of your mind for hours. For that, there's a different piece of research. From 1954, psychologist Festinger proposed what became one of the most replicated findings in behavioral psychology. He called it social comparison theory. And his central observation was both simple and difficult to sit with. Humans have a built-in drive to evaluate themselves, their abilities, their choices, their life circumstances. When there's no objective standard to measure against, we do it by looking at other people. This is not a personality flaw. It's not a sign of insecurity. It is a fundamental feature of how human cognition works. It runs constantly, often below conscious awareness, and it cannot simply be switched off. Festinger noticed that we tend to compare ourselves to people who resemble us, same age, same background, same field, same general starting point, your college friends, your siblings, people who were in the same place you were 5 or 10 years ago. The closer someone is to your own circumstances, the more powerful the comparison becomes. And there are 2 directions it can go. Downward comparison and measuring yourself against someone who seems worse off tends to produce temporary relief. Upward comparison, Measuring yourself against someone who appears further ahead produces something else entirely. That quiet, creeping, entirely specific feeling of falling behind. Social media didn't invent upward comparison, but it industrialized it. What a social media feed actually is: a curated stream of everyone's peak moments, engagements, promotions, new homes, vacations, milestones. What nobody posts is the full picture. The ordinary Tuesday afternoons, the uncertainty that doesn't resolve, the years that don't look like anything yet. Nobody posts, "I cried in my car for 20 minutes before a meeting." Nobody posts, "I'm 34 and I have no idea what I'm doing." So what happens, without you consciously choosing it, is this. You compare your complete, unfiltered, ordinary life to everyone else's greatest hits. Every single day, you're comparing the whole film to someone else's trailer. That comparison was never going to feel even. Because it isn't. Here's something that reframes the feeling entirely. The pain of being behind isn't metaphorical, it's physical. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran a series of studies using a simple virtual game. Participants played an online ball-tossing exercise with what they thought were other players. At a certain point, the others stopped including them, just stopped passing the ball. The participants knew it was a computer simulation. They knew the other players weren't real people in the room. Their brains didn't adjust for that. The same neural regions that activate during physical pain lit up when people experience social exclusion. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the part of the brain that processes the unpleasantness of being hurt, responds to being left out in the same way it responds to physical injury. Not metaphorically. Literally the same circuitry. This is why just stop comparing yourself to others is such genuinely unhelpful advice. You are not going to think your way out of a pain response. The feeling of being behind is not a logical conclusion you arrived at through careful reasoning. It is a threat alarm going off in your nervous system. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent years researching what he called the need to belong, one of the most fundamental human drives, as basic as hunger, as basic as thirst. For most of human history, being excluded from the group wasn't uncomfortable. It was fatal. The brain evolved over tens of thousands of years to treat social standing as survival-critical information. When you feel behind, what your brain is actually registering is something ancient. I may not be valued enough. I may not belong here. I may be losing my place. Ancient threat, modern context, same alarm system, and the alarm doesn't know the difference. There's one more layer, and it might be the most important one. Psychologists use the term life script to describe the narrative template we carry for how a life is supposed to unfold. Not just the milestones of the social clock, but the whole arc. The meaning of each stage. The feeling you're supposed to have when you get there. The order. The shape of it. Here's the uncomfortable question. Who wrote yours? For most people, the honest answer is I absorbed it. From parents. From the culture around them, from movies and television where characters had careers and apartments and romantic clarity before 30. From comparison. Always comparison. The life script is almost never consciously chosen. It's inherited. And then it quietly becomes the standard against which you measure your actual life, which being real and unpredictable and genuinely yours keeps failing to match. Neugarten's research found something striking. People who diverge from the social clock, who marry late, change careers at 50, have children in their 40s, report higher stress and anxiety around those transitions. But not because being off schedule produces worse outcomes. In many cases, the outcomes are comparable. or richer. The distress comes from the perception of deviation, from the feeling of playing a game where everyone else seems to know the rules and you've somehow broken them. But here's what that actually means. The schedule isn't real. The race isn't real. The finish line isn't real. What's real is the pain of measuring yourself against a fictional standard, one that was constructed by culture, absorbed without consent, and applied to a life that was never designed to fit it. The feeling of being behind has a source. It's not evidence about your life. It's the output of a specific cognitive system. Upward social comparison, running automatically against an internalized cultural script you never consciously agreed to. Once you can trace the feeling back to its mechanism, something shifts. You stop treating it as a verdict. You start seeing it as a signal, not about where you are, but about how your brain processes social information. Neugarten spent decades studying people who did things off schedule. Her research kept arriving at the same finding. Off-time events, when they were chosen rather than forced, often produced more intentional lives, not worse ones. The deviation from the script was not the problem. The belief that deviation was failure, that was the problem. The social clock was never a law. It was a cultural artifact, assembled gradually, absorbed unconsciously, and mistaken for something objective. The comparison machine runs automatically because it evolved too. The pain is real because the brain doesn't distinguish between social threat and physical threat. None of that is a character flaw. None of that is evidence of a life going wrong. It's just a very old system running in a world it wasn't built for. And understanding that, really understanding the mechanism underneath the feeling, doesn't make the feeling disappear overnight. But it does change what the feeling means. You're not behind. You're just on a timeline that nobody else has ever lived, measuring it against a map that was never drawn for you.